There we go. We'll call the meeting of the Utilities Committee for Monday, August 26th to order. Roll call, Madam Secretary. All members present except for Councilman Travis Turner. If everyone please rise for the invocation, be followed by the pledge, be led by Mr. Ken Dawson.
Let us pray. Father, again we come giving you thanks and glory, O God, for all the blessings that you bestowed upon us. Father, we ask, O God, that you allow us to keep in remembrance, O Father, the blessing that you've given us, O God, and pray for those, O Lord God, who are in need. Father, we have situations, O God, that are causing concern. We pray, O Lord God, for all our armed service people overseas, O God, and we pray that you protect them in all the situations, O God, that are going on in foreign lands, O Father. Please watch over them. So, Lord, as we come tonight, we ask, O God, for your wisdom and your guidance, because you're the one that gives wisdom freely. Father, have us to make the decisions, O God, that will better Ascension Parish, O God, and cause a better quality of life, O God, for its citizens. We give you all the glory and praise in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. We do not have any chairs additions. Public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak on any agenda item can come up, sign it with the secretary. They will be given 3 minutes when that item comes up on the agenda. Approval of the minutes from July 22nd. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Sadler, second by Councilman Joseph. Any discussion? Any opposition? Minutes are approved. Item 6 on the agenda. We have a presentation by CSRS on private-public partnerships. I'm sure as some of the folks in the audience as well as the public may remember in the workshops we've had last year and continuing on through the work that we've done up till now, we've had this kind of as a side note. And as a chairman as well as a committee and administration, anytime we can educate ourselves as well as the public, we want to take that opportunity to do that. And with as much work and effort we're putting into sewer for the parish, there's multitudes or there's many avenues, and Mr. Sanji, I think, is going to present that for us to show us what the private-public partnerships have the potential to be, and if we do decide to go to that effort, what's the benefits as well as the issues with it. And so, Mr. Sanji, the floor is yours, sir.
Carla, the clicker.
I'm sorry.
Should have checked on that sooner, I guess.
Well,
While we're waiting on this, I wanted to introduce our team here tonight. Gasper Chafisi, who you all know with CSRS, is here, as well as Mr. Matt Kern with Jones Walker. Jones Walker, as well as Provident Resource Group, have been working together with us on some of this information. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Again, my name is Michael Sanji with CSRS. There has been a lot of discussion in the parish, obviously, about constructing a sewer system. I think the discussion tonight would be around the concept of building what we're calling a comprehensive or a holistic approach, and to do that, obviously, you would need to examine other legal and financial framework in order to do that. So that's what this is centered around. It's simply a suggestion or an alternative that I think the parish may consider. So you asked the question, you know, why would we try to approach it in a holistic or a parish-wide basis? And I think we all know with the just announced expansions of the industrial sector, not only in Ascension Parish, but to the parishes just to the south of us, If I'm not mistaken, we're talking in the $5 to $7.5 billion of investment, and I understand there's other announcements that may be on the way. And so I think it becomes obvious that increase in population would result in further strain and further impacts on the existing sewer systems in the parish. So we've done some research, and this is not us as an engineering or architecture firm trying to advise you. This is simply reading and collecting information, and again, talking with experts at Jones Walker as well as Provident Resource Group in Baton Rouge about public-private partnerships. What I have tonight and on the screen are just examples of literature that you can review. There's a National Council for Public-Private Partnerships, has some very good objective information, Urban Land Institute, as well as the Reason Foundation. Throughout the presentation, you're going to see some footnotes at the bottom, and those are citing one of these three articles that we're mentioning, just to let you know that this is not our opinion, but published opinion. So what is a public-private partnership? Quite simply, it's expressed as a contractual agreement between a public agency and a private sector entity. Well, we all know that this happens all the time, but a public-private partnership can grow to be much more complex than that. The skills and assets of each are shared in delivering a service or a facility for use in the public. And again, you can somewhat take the best of both worlds in utilizing the best skills and the best assets of each party. And once again, each party shares in the risk and the reward associated with it. One of the important things we're going to stress here is that due to funding restraints, the parish can share the risk out to the private sector, which is something that should look good to your balance sheets as you look forward in the future. So some history. The first wastewater treatment plant was privatized in 1972 in California. This statistic is pretty surprising in that 90% of public sector officials who were questioned about the use of public-private partnerships said that they would pursue them again. So the success ratio of them has been quite successful. There's over 2,000 water and wastewater public-private partnerships today in the United States. The advantages of a public-private partnership. One is increased efficiency in project delivery and operations. You can turn to the private sector, not only towards the design, but also the construction, also the maintenance and the operation. So you do have the ability to truly privatize the entire system and gain some efficiency with that. Availability of outside resources, both in capital and expertise. There are increasingly more and more today private equity companies that have the cash and willingness to finance and fund these projects, and you are able to utilize their capital, and you are able to transfer some of the risk from the government to a private entity. There's a drawback to that, and we'll get to it. But the other issue is you're using the expertise of the outside resources. One advantage is that you could identify an operator who will ultimately operate the system, bring him in early and get their feedback in terms of how the system should be designed so that it can be operated the most efficient. Lower immediate cash outlays to initiate the project. Once again, if you're successful in obtaining private sector funding, it would mean less cash burden to the parish, as well as transferring the risk. With the obtaining of private sector equity, you would be transferring the risk to the private sector as well. What are the concerns? To be objective about this, we need to tell you that, you know, what the publications say. One is agency control versus agency oversight. In order to take advantage of some of these items that I've mentioned, you would need to have a separate agency that's overseeing the project. You as a council or your utility district would have oversight over that in terms of determining who the board is and what the objectives and the rates. But there is some loss of control in terms of relying on this board to make decisions about the content of the construction documents, the methods of contracting and whatnot. So this is an area that does give concern, although, as I mentioned, it's been successfully done. There is a higher cost of capital. If you go into the private sector, obviously private equity, and you're looking to transfer the risk, you can expect to pay margins above what you could borrow the money for directly. And I'll let, generally speaking, this higher cost of capital, in the opinions of those that have done it, is offset. In other words, there's greater advantages to constructing the system as a whole. There's greater advantages to having a private operator, and that those savings, generally speaking, overcome the higher cost of the capital. Another concern, it's really not a concern, but it's a step that you've got to take, is you do have to identify a 501c3 public-private partner, and you have to go through a procurement to select them, and there are costs to do so. So there are some upfront issues that you do have to deal with in order to get a public-private partnership going. What are some examples of where this has been done? Benny had asked this question of me earlier. We're giving you 4 or 5 locations here. These are specific to wastewater systems. There's also a pretty good example that I was just finding today in Rialto, California, that was both, and it was a somewhat similar size to Ascension Parish. But it was a combination of a water and sewer system combined, where this has been done successfully. So the different models that you could look at, and one of the biggest advantages of a public-private partnership is that it opens the door for you to look at really 3 or 4 or 5 different ways to do it. At the top, we're showing design build. That's typically what you're doing now. In other words, you're hiring a private contractor to do design, you're hiring a private contractor to build it, and then you're taking it over from there. You could look simply at design, build, operate, where you take that, and all these are just taking them one step further. You could grow that to design, build, operate. You could grow that to design, build, operate, and maintain. And the last item, design, build, operate, maintain, and transfer. The ownership of the system, once it's constructed, in most cases, the ownership does transfer back to the parish or the government entity. There's an advantage of the government entity owning the system, primarily because the Public Service Commission, if a private entity owns it, they're regulated by the Public Service Commission. In this case, if we did it and could transfer the ownership back, then the parish would become the regulator and not the Public Service Commission. So when you start to look at the governmental structure, there are, and Benny, you had asked this question as well, what's wrong with the parish engaging directly with the private partner? The answer to that is nothing. There are some limitations in terms of getting that private equity and private funding in place. That you would have some limitations if you did not go to the third bullet here. But you could really do any of these scenarios. You could have your parish council through your Ascension Utility District, which is already created, contract with a private partner. The very last bullet is the same scenario where the utility district would actually enter into an agreement with what's called a special purpose entity. This is a not-for-profit entity whose sole purpose is to construct and maintain the sewer system. So this was the step that I mentioned a while ago of going through the effort of procuring a PPP partner. So you would ask about a special purpose entity and what is it, why is it there? First of all, it's a nonprofit legal entity that's created to fulfill specific objectives. In other words, the only reason it exists, in this case, might be to construct and oversee the maintenance of a sewer system. This special purpose entity would have the ability to contract just like the private sector, just like Exxon or Dow or any other private company. They would have the ability. They wouldn't, if you wanted them to follow your own procurement processes, they could, but they would not be required to. They would have the freedom to contract like the private sector. This is big, the ability to attract private equity investments, and this is where a public-private 501c3 company similar to Provident, this is where their value is that they can help you locate those companies that have the equity that are interested in investing and help to make that happen. The special purpose entity also separates the financial risk from the sponsor. In other words, if they're funding 80, 70, 80% of the project, then they are at risk for that amount of money. It's not logical to think that you're going to have a private equity come in and fund 100% of it, but whatever amount they will fund, that portion of the risk is excluded from the parish. The last but not least, but private sector expertise on the board, this special purpose entity would have its own board. You would be able to put people on it that have specific expertise relative to the project. In other words, if you wanted financing expertise, construction expertise, engineering expertise, operational expertise, whatever, you would have the ability to set the board up such that you could make sure that those expertises were there. So what are the keys to success that these publications talk about? And I'll go through several of them. One is a public sector champion. Obviously, I'm going to jump to the next to last bullet because I think the two of these are important, is stakeholder support. The citizens have to feel that this holistic approach, this private sector funding, private sector operation is the correct way to go. And I think what they're trying to say here is a public sector champion or champions those that can help to educate the public about why the parish would choose to do this is very important. The statutory environment is not an issue here. The public sector's organized structure, again, there's a framework where your utility district would contract and have agreements with the special purpose entity, and it's important that those be set up right. Obviously, you want a detailed contract and business plan for this to come off properly. Clearly defined revenue stream. That's going to be an issue for you irregardless of which way you go. There must be a revenue stream to support it. And the last bullet, obviously, the right private partner. In a situation like this, most probably you would be looking for a system operator again who would be looking at the long-term operation and maintenance of this system and having their ability to influence the design so that once it's constructed, they can operate it efficiently. Okay, I have some other slides available, and I thought I would stop here just to entertain any questions and answers and see.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Carla, show Councilman Turner has arrived, please, for the record. I'm going to take chair's privilege because I got a couple questions that came out of that, Michael, if you don't mind. Kind of beat Mr. Parrington to the punch here. You mentioned design build a lot in your presentation, And I know one of that's illegal in the state of Louisiana, as I understand it. So how does this, how can you accomplish that with the current design build restrictions that we have in the state?
I'm going to ask Matt to correct me if I'm wrong. I think if you are a public entity, that would be correct, but I think the minute you go to a special purpose entity, that you would be enabled to do that.
So depending on how you set it up, you would break
Yes.
that connection in order to allow the design build
Yes,
type thing,
yes.
okay?
What I'm told is that if this is set up properly, you are essentially able to contract, the special purpose entity is able to contract like the private sector would. And the private sector obviously has that.
Right.
has that ability.
Because one of the things that, that I think is important that we get across to the public, that to maximize the benefit of this, the setup in all this is the most important thing. Because the objective is to take advantage of the things that the private sector brings to the table, such as the design build, which saves money and time, as well as being able to get access to government monies to help pay for that percentage that you talked about, whether it be the low interest bonds or the state revolving fund, those types of money. So with the three types that you showed, can that be done with all three of those as far as setting it up to where you can take advantage of that? Or, I mean, I realize that the special purpose entity is probably the recommended route to go, but with the other two,
Well, if you don't go the special purpose entity, you had asked the question when we talked earlier about what prevents the council from just going straight to an RFQ and solicit an operator to do it. And again, if that operator says, well, I want to build it using design build, then you're at a stopping point. I'm simply trying to open the eyes that this scenario gives you the greatest amount of flexibility as you go into it. It doesn't mean that you have to exercise any of those rights, but
Right.
it does give you the greatest degree of flexibility.
okay. And the last thing for me, as far as the rate of return on the investment, what sets that in this process? Let's say we go with the special purpose entity across the board, and they're bringing in, they're going to bring in a sizable chunk of money to this thing. So what's going to set the rate of return? I understand in our conversations in the past and with others that somewhere between 6 and 10% with operation and maintenance cost embedded in that. So I mean, whatever your O&M cost would be 3 or 4% or whatever, they would get that other rate. But so what sets that?
I'm not sure that I'm qualified to answer that. I would say the market is going to set that. It's going to depend on the number of entities that are out there that are willing to finance something like this and what type of rate of return. That's going to have a lot to do with your funding stream that's paying for it and the reliability of it. That's going to have to do with who the operator is, the financiers. As I understand it, the financiers and the operators, not legally, but somewhat get used to doing business with certain financiers like to do business with certain operators because they have a trust in them.
Right.
And so all those factors, I think, begin to come into play. I don't think there's a magic number that says that they have to have a certain rate of return.
So it's not market driven as far as stock market up and
No.
down. I mean, it's basically going to be
I
a set
think
rate
it's gonna
established
be-
at the beginning of the process?
I think it's, well, I mean, once that, the special purpose entity collects I guess, the bid or the quote from the operator, and the operator is building the financing into his, in other words, he's totally responsible for literally the entire aspect of it, including the financing. So he's got to build those financing costs into the model.
Okay. Mr. Kluwak.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Quick questions on, the first bullet point on the concerns was agency control versus agency oversight.
Okay?
Where in the Ascension Parish scenario, what do you see that?
Ms. Carla, can I get my PowerPoint back?
Yeah.
Is that possible.
And the agency being us.
Okay. And this is something that I think had showed Benny previously. This is, for some reason the lines aren't connected there. I'm not sure what you're seeing on your screen, but to the left is the Ascension Parish Council.
Yes,
Ascension Parish Council already has a consolidated East Bank utility district, right? So some modification might be needed, but you would have a utility district. So jump now to the upper right, not-for-profit PPP facilitator, okay? You would select that private entity, a PPP facilitator. That facilitator can, on his own, create what's called a special purpose entity, all right? So what happens is the private sector is creating this entity, and basically the utility district is going into a memorandum of understanding or an agreement with that special purpose entity. And it has its own, the special purpose entity has its own board, but once again, as you enter into that agreement, you can specify board members, what particular expertise that you want, such that when it's up and running, you are simply monitoring the work of that board.
okay. And so the SPE would be made up of, designated people, and who would choose those? You just said that would be chosen by the board, would be a group of who?
I think
Chosen by the facilitator?
I think the facilitator would choose it. Obviously, in the beginning, I think it would have input from the parish itself. And again, the parish, it can stipulate, I believe, the level, the professional expertise that it is needed. Now, Matt, I don't know if you want to, or Steve, you're here, okay. Please come in. This is Steve Hicks with Provident Resource Group. I didn't realize you'd
Yeah.
come in. Thank you. You understand his question?
Yes, with respect to the procedure for the appointment of the board members of the limited liability company, as it's referred to, the agreement reached between, in the case of the proposal that's being submitted by the team led by CSRS, would be where the LLC would be a Louisiana limited liability company, and in the agreement between Provident Resources Group as the organizer of that LLC, we would agree with you as to whether you wanted the recommendations for the names of the individuals to be appointed to come from the parish council or from the parish president. So that would be a decision for you to collectively make as to how the recommendations are made. We've used this structure in 18 states and the District of Columbia, and we've done about $1.6 billion in capital projects using this structure. So we know that it works in the marketplace and it's been accepted by the market. If you were to have a 5-member governing board, it would have one representative on that board from Provident. There'd be one representative from local government that is, and by local government I mean the parish of Ascension. One person who is either an elected official or a member of the senior management of the parish. The others would be local Ascension Parish citizens that, as Michael has indicated, have the requisite expertise that you would want to have on the board from the standpoint of operations and finance and engineering and, the technical expertise. And so you would recommend the names of the individuals to be appointed and to serve in that capacity.
Yes, and that's clear. So the SPE, the special purpose entity, would be an LLC.
Yes, sir, a Louisiana limited liability company.
But a 501c?
The reason, it is a 501c3 because the sole member of that LLC is or would be a 501c3. And under tax regulations and rulings of the IRS, if the LLC has a single member, and that single member is a duly recognized 501c3, like Provident, the entity that I'm the CEO of, then the LLC is deemed to be the alter ego of the C3. It's deemed to be a disregarded entity for tax purposes. So it's relatively complex in tax jargon, but the bottom line is it's treated as if it were a 501c3 exempt organization itself.
Okay, and just expanding what I initiated about agency control versus agency oversight, is the level of control that the parish government, local government would have over the progress, over the
I think
the project, or?
I think what the publication is trying to say is that in your conventional way of doing business, you have, I don't want to say 100% control, but you have, you are the ones making the decisions. I think in here it's more of an oversight capacity, and you're relying on that board, that special purpose entity board, again, to make decisions about the content of the RFQ, the selection process, and how it's going to happen. Again, you're controlling the rates, the funding stream, and overseeing the work of the board. And as Steve mentioned, if you want it stipulated where they are Ascension Parish residents and of specific expertise, it comes down to the trust of what's on that board, yes.
And so while you're talking about, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You want to say
If
something?
I can make one other point, in addition to the governing board, what we have done in numerous other situations, the limited liability company, that SPE that we've been referring to, the SPE can also have what we refer to as an operations committee. Now, while that committee does not have governing authority, it does not have decision-making authority, that committee would be the entity that would develop the annual operating budget for the LLC, for the system, the sewer system. It would develop the capital budget, the operating budget, and then it would make those recommendations to the governing board of the LLC. The operating committee can have an overwhelming majority of the members on that operating committee that would come from local government, from Ascension Parish. And if I may give you an example, we did a $200+ million project for a major state university in New Jersey. The limited liability company has a three-member governing board, but it has a 7-member operating committee. And 4 of the 7 members of that operating committee come from the senior management of that state university. And so they're the ones that develop the operating budget, the capital budget, and they determine, setting the rates and what have you, and they make the recommendation to the governing board.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And while we're talking about the rates, the basic sewer rates, monthly rates, whatever, that, people would have to pay, the board or the SPE would they have
No, let me.
control or oversight over rate changes going forward to the, say, the Public Service Commission or whomever?
The council or the utility district is the only one that can have regulation, obviously, over what its residents pay. One of the reasons that I've mentioned to Benny about the concept of an operator and bringing an operator in early is that when you go to try to determine rates, and by rates, I presume you're talking user
Sure.
fees or rates at a house, and want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, we're elected officials, so we've got a direct
Yes.
responsibility toward the
So
citizens of the parish.
in
That's
order
what
to
I'm-
set a rate, you not only need to know engineering cost, but you need to know construction cost. You need to know what your finance costs, acquisitions of right-of-way, maintenance costs and operational costs. And so it's our belief that the only way you're going to get to a true understanding of what the rate is to build all of those components into one. And there are operators out there in the United States, there's several of them, and that's what they do. They take a very holistic approach and build all of that in. The answer is that in process, I think the special purpose entity would be engaged to solicit proposals from operators, to pull all this together, to get that answer back in terms of if the parish chooses to do a system, this is what we need per household. Not where it's coming from, but we need this amount of money per household based on so many households in order to do the system holistically. At that point, it comes back to the Ascension Parish Utility District or the Ascension Parish Council to actually put those user fees or revenue, whatever the revenue source is, to put them in play. Once they're in play, then the operator can collect the fees and go on with the business. But I want to make it very clear, they do not have any authority to generate a funding stream. Only the council can do that. Is that in anything?
Well, I want to add one additional comment. The financing sources, the market, whenever the debt is issued, the market is going to require that in setting those rates, that the rates be set at such a level that they can assure a certain minimum debt service coverage ratio is met. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to be true regardless of what method of financing. You're going to have that kind of an affirmative covenant in the financing documents. And that would apply to the LLC as the borrower of that debt as well. So the SPE would have a covenant in its financing documents that while it does not set the rate, the contracts between the SPE and the parish would require you to set it so that you get at least, in most cases, a 1.20 debt service coverage is met each year. So, but beyond that, the decision will rest with the local governing body in setting what the actual rates will be. But you won't be permitted under the financing documents to go below what would generate that 120 debt service coverage, as an example.
Randy, excuse me one second. Clarification on that point, though. My memory serves me correct. I think we've had conversations that said that it could be done either way, depending on how you set it up, to where either, whether it be the SPE or the facilitator, could be given that authority to set rates.
Well, they could be, if you so chose. You could give the governing body of the LLC, subject to state law, and that's not my expertise, and I'm not a practicing attorney. So, but if state law were to allow a governmental body to, in effect, delegate that rate-setting responsibility to the governing board of the LLC, then they could certainly do that, and that could be made part of the agreement. Yes.
Okay. Anything else, Randy?
That's all.
Councilman Sadler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank both of you gentlemen for your presentations. I don't know who this question goes to, but maybe it goes to you, Michael. I'm not certain. I think Councilman Kluat is hit upon a very important thing here, and I want to just be absolutely sure that I understand it. So without setting up this SPE, this special purpose entity, we, meaning Ascension Parish, could not enjoy control, I believe this is what you said, Mr. Sanji, of a rate increase without Public Service Commission approval, which is the normal way this would happen if a private company is just doing it and they're going to the PSC, like Density or MODAD, whatever, and asking for a rate increase. But now when you enter this board, how is it that we have control unless they make recommendation to us? I mean, if you say it's made up of, let's say, a member from Providence, an elected official, maybe an appointed official, and several citizens, is our control through influencing them, or do we absolutely, you're saying we can put in a document that says we have not abdicated our control of the rate?
It's my understanding that the issue of the Public Service Commission is that the system must be owned by the parish. Okay?
So the key, in so much what I just said,
Right.
is in putting in a
But
document
the
that,
special purpose entity, you
is that that part
could-
where you said DBOMT, the transfer part?
Yes, correct.
Ah,
Yes,
so-
but the special purpose entity, it's my understanding, and again, all of this needs to be vetted by the
So if we wanted
by
that
the
control,
legals.
we would want transfer.
yes, exactly. In your agreement with the special purpose entity is, okay, you told me you needed X dollars per household to build this thing, okay? So here's your rate, it's in effect, go build it. When it's built and operational, you're gonna give the ownership of it back to me. And the reason is that you are the regulator in terms of or under that scenario, you would be the regulator in terms of setting the rates, or you could, as Steve says, you could either leave it with the entity or keep it for yourself. But I want to make sure the Public Service Commission is about the ownership of the system. Just like Baton Rouge Water, if they own their system, and Entergy, they're subject to Public Service Commission regulation. City of Baton Rouge, who owns their system, is not subject to that. They can set their own rates. So you do have the ability to establish who's going to own the system once it's
And transfers is not something that a PPP facilitator, or whatever the correct terminology is here, would fight? I mean, they would just readily do this?
If you stipulate that is
Part of the
how
deal
it's
up front.
going to yes, part of the deal up front. I
Structure.
don't believe that they would fight it, no.
Okay, and then.
Because
okay.
they're going to be looking at a fixed term. You can have an agreement with some private operator for some period of time, okay, and he's going to understand how it's designed, how it's built, and he's going to operate and maintain it himself. He's got financing that's got some term to it, right? And your agreement, at the end of that term, you own the system, you have the ability to renegotiate with some other operator. By then, maybe the system needs enhancement or reconstruction or whatever.
Right. And then a follow-up question. I think Councilman Cluett and I now have exhausted this agency control concern versus agency oversight, but you had another bullet. It said higher cost of capital, and I think you made a promise that you would elaborate on that. What I want to hear more on is the primary concern
I'm
that
glad
the-
Steve is here, because I'm going to let
that
him.
the PPP results in a higher cost of capital than we could get otherwise, say, for example, a very low-interest loan from SRF.
With respect to the cost of capital, let's start with the debt piece first. Assuming that there is debt incurred by the SPE, the general rule in the marketplace is, I apologize, but I don't know the bond rating of Ascension Parish. Sir? A-minus.
It's very good,
Real good.
real good.
As an A-minus bond rating, the SPE's debt will trade at an interest rate, what the market refers to as one tick below what your rating is. So if you're an A-minus, then these bonds would trade at a triple B plus, or, like I said, one tick below. And that would generally mean maybe 25 basis points or so in average coupon or so. Yep. So that's what we mean by having a higher cost of capital. On the debt side, because of the difference in the rate, it would be the interest rate through all of the maturities would be slightly higher by 20, 25 basis points at the most. Now, to the extent there's an equity component brought in through the SPE and through the service providers that you have international companies like Macquarie as one example that routinely invest in these types of public-private partnership projects. And so the equity capital that they bring to the table is going to have a high single-digit, if not low double-digit cost associated with that equity capital. So,
I stand corrected, double the amount.
oh, well then we'd be looking at an A plus. So we would be, again, one tick below what Mr. Martinez had indicated. So, yes, sir. Good bit. So, so that equity component that you have through the private sector is a cost that you're not going to incur yourself. But you have to weigh the efficiencies. I'll give you one other example. We did a project for the state of North Carolina a number of years ago where we financed 3 1,000-bed high-security prisons for the state of North Carolina. It was about a $227 million financing for the state. The state was under a federal court order at the time to add 5,000 beds to their inventory because of overcrowding and poor conditions. So we did 3,000 of those 5,000 beds. By the state of North Carolina's own calculations, the structure saved them, while it had a slightly higher interest rate than it would have had the state of North Carolina done it themselves. We saved them over $10 million in that project. So,
In this case here, the efficiencies of building the system holistically for the entire East Bank, as opposed to going to do phase 1 this year and phase 2 in 2 years and phase 3 in 4 years, obviously you're going to have inefficiencies by doing that. You're going to have inflation over time. So again, there's an economy of scale of doing the entire, there's more reasons than I can cite tonight. There's an economy of scale, simply put, on doing the system in a holistic approach that is going, in most cases, outweighs the additional cost that Steve just described to you in terms of the financing. In other words, it's, in relative terms, it's marginal, or you're going to make sure it's marginal before you proceed, but we all know that what the advantages are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Mr. President.
So what is the purpose of the nonprofit organization? I mean, we don't pay taxes anyway as a public entity, and I'm just trying, I've never heard a presentation where we had a special entity here where it's a nonprofit. Why would that be necessary from the parish's standpoint?
I may want to let either Steve or Matt, but I'm presuming that that's the part of having an entity that can act like the private sector and contract like the private sector, hire private operators to construct and maintain it, whereas you would have limitations. You may have limitations, but I don't know, Steve, if you want to.
the primary reason, Mr. President, is with the 501c3 structure, and I can only speak to Provident Resources Group, my company. As a 501c3, the Internal Revenue Service has recognized us as being able to undertake projects in 5 different mission areas. The one that is applicable here is what we refer to as our City-State Resources Division, which is where the IRS-approved activity is lessening the burdens of government, where we're working to assist state or local government. The North Carolina Prison Project obviously was state assistance. In this case, our mission would be to serve local government, Ascension Parish. It gives us the ability to issue tax-exempt bonds just like you do, except at a slightly higher interest cost. But it also, because we are a private 501c3, there are certain state procurement procedures that we do not have to adhere to. Now, we have to, as a nonprofit, we have to be assured that we're getting fair and reasonable market rate prices for construction and for professional services for the management of the system. But we do not have to go through the detailed public bid laws and the public procurement process that would be otherwise applicable to Ascension Parish. Unless it was the decision in the concession agreement or the development agreement between the nonprofit and the parish that you were to direct us that, notwithstanding the fact that you don't have to, we want you to, then, you know, we'd go through that process. But that would negate some of the advantages that the structure would provide to the parish.
All right. Any other questions, gentlemen? Well, Michael, we want to thank y'all for coming out tonight and educating us on this. Hopefully, it's definitely some useful information.
If I could just make a couple of points. And
Sure.
I think there's a million questions here, and we understand that. I think the bottom line that you have to look at is that the ability to get outside private equity funding, and that's huge. Because as you begin to look at this number from parish-wide, it is large, and the ability to do that is huge. Secondly, this is obviously a lot to grab tonight, and I appreciate your patience. If this is an avenue that the parish may want to consider and pursue, obviously a phase of work needs to go into, you know, unwinding all of these questions in terms of the legality and the financing and making sure that that the parish would be comfortable. We simply reached out to a company, Provident Resource Group, that's doing this nationwide, just about everywhere but here, and a law firm, Jones Walker and Fred Chevalier and Matt, to ask them these questions. And all that I can tell you is from everything these experts have told us, that this is a logical candidate to do this type of scenario. So obviously it raises a lot of questions, but I would certainly encourage you to read some of the information we've provided, and if you choose to take it a step further, obviously these are all very good questions that you've asked that you need to get comfortable with. So thank you.
Thank you. Again, appreciate y'all coming out and giving us this little educational tidbit. It's a lot of information we'll hopefully put to good use in the future in making our decisions as we progress forward with sewer. All right, moving on to item number 7, updates on Highway 73 and 42 projects. Mr. Michael Petty.
Okay, so I wanted to take an opportunity to update the committee again on where we stand with the Highway 73 and Highway 42 sewer improvement projects. So I'll begin with the 73 project. As you know, that is the one that's currently under construction. Came with you tonight with some numbers. I know it might be of interest to understand what this project means as far as new customers today, but also, you know, what it potentially means in the future as far as, you know, expansion. So today, with the 73 system, there are approximately 23 new customers that will be added to that line. And then in addition to the 23, and I think it came out at the Transportation Committee that there was approximately 12 to 15 properties that through one reason or another were missed or omitted from the original design that Sigma, our consultant, is working to correct. That number actually was on the high side. We've identified that there's approximately 5 additional properties, homes, that need to be added. So with that addition of 5, we're talking about 28 customers. However, that seems like a small number now. As you know, when we expand out from that line, we have the capacity to be able to take on more customers. When I was here last month, I spoke about the error in the contractor where he deviated from the plans. He actually installed some sewer manholes and lines that weren't exactly the way that the design had been worked out in the plans. Through additional examination of what was going on there and through negotiations with the contractor actually repaired all of those instances to match the plans, rather than, the scenario like I mentioned last month where I said that, we would evaluate and then it would be determined at a later time whether or not the system would function correctly or whatever. That system those issues have been taken care of. That repair has been completed. Due to the fact that we had that scenario and a number of other issues, weather-related, most of the issues are weather-related with the quite unusually wet summer that we've had. DOTD estimates that the project is roughly about 4 months behind schedule. I think initially we were looking at an estimated completion date somewhere in March of 2014. I think it might have been slightly before March at some point in time. Right now, DOTD is estimating the completion date of June 14th of 2014 for that project. So moving on to Highway 42, that project is not under construction yet. Just to give you a little bit of idea, there are approximately 51 connections on that line that are going to be direct connections as a result of that line to that system. However, I think maybe the committee is aware the expansion of that system could be as many as 2,500 homes with the subdivisions and adjoining properties that could be a part of that system. The contract with Toulier Engineers that I mentioned last month is in negotiation right now with legal, and we expect for that contract to be in place very soon for the construction, engineering, and inspection component of that project. And I just wanted to make you a little bit aware, MWH was our consulting engineer on this project. Through a situation of a contract that was in place for the design, there was no bidding assistance component of that contract. So through contractors that are going to be submitting bids on that project and the submissions of questions to DOT's bidding system, there was not really anyone in place to respond and answer to those questions. We have talked with our consulting engineer, and we will be coming to the full council to ask for a contract to amend that, to add those types of services. With that in mind, the original letting date of the first phase of that project was supposed to have been the 22nd of August. That date has been pushed back to September the 9th, with the understanding that the contractor, or with our consultant, would be able to handle the answering of those questions. It is possible that that date could slip a little further, depending on the amount of time it actually takes to answer the questions from the contractors.
Okay. Questions? Mr. Sadler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Petty, you gave a number of 2,500 for a build-out on Highway 42 from the 51 customers, and I think the adjusted numbers you said on 73 at 28 customers. I didn't hear it. Did I miss it, a build-out number, what we could expect there?
I did not give one. I was not able before this meeting to come with that number in mind. It will not be as large as the 42, but it would be similar in size. I mean, I would be guessing at this point, but 12 to 1,500 houses in the likelihood could be added to that if we tied into existing package plants and consolidated a system down to that system. But like I said, I don't want anyone to take that number as a hard number, because that would be somewhat of an educated guess at this point.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Excuse me. All right. Moving on, carry over from last month, item number 8 is parish sewer rate increase. Mr. Brian Martinez.
Yes, sir. Last month, we brought to you a report from the auditors which show the deficit happening since 2007 for the operating the wastewater plants. The numbers were kind of screwed, or they had some numbers in there that I couldn't answer the questions for, and you asked our finance people to attend the next meeting, which they're presently here. They also presented another Exhibit A in your current agenda, which identifies kind of a stripped-down version of those numbers with the basics, identifying the real operating expenses and revenues and giving you those numbers without the numbers that are inflated in the audit report with depreciation and other movements of funds. They also projected the annual incomes based on an average of 482 customers of the 4 systems. At the bottom of that exhibit, that shows if we increase the rate to $35 from $30, it would be, roughly another 29,000. And if it was went to $40, and it'd be about 57,000, and $45 would be 86,000. Identifies the deficit through the years from 2008 to 2013 with the projections, and shows those deficit numbers running through, that you can kind of get an idea on what those differences are. And again, we're here to discuss the potential of increasing the rate based on these numbers, and we can entertain some questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Mr. President, you'd want? Yeah, I just, we got some significantly different numbers that, just down on, projection and revenue would increase rates in that line. Do y'all have both of those in front of you?
Yeah, the totals with the additional.
Okay, each system.
Yes, sir. Yeah, questions about the projected annual increase?
Yeah, the line says projection and revenue with increased rates. The Exhibit A that's attached, that actually has Exhibit A written on top of it versus the handout.
I believe the handouts, finance had broken down, each of those handouts is basically, this is the one attaches a summary, and the ones that they handed out were per plant. So you should have 4 sheets of paper that
Right.
basically breaks it up into each plant.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to make that clear. Not just a cover sheet.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, you had something?
Basically, as you see, we've added the depreciation, and basically the total numbers that comes up is that the operating loss with the depreciation is $454,000 a year. We think that is accurate, and also you'll see that the major changes from 2012 to 2013 is basically in professional services, which is to remove the sludge. And the other thing, we went from 19,000 to 87,000 to do maintenance and major repairs. So that's where the increases are for this year. And in the past, if you look, other than the 2008 year, before a lot of these systems came on board, the Harryville system in particular, the operating expenses were 136, but since then they've been pretty consistent over the past, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So, I mean, it's not a whole lot of increases or decreases there, other than this year we're putting in for some more maintenance. But to get these systems whole, basically your rate would have to be $120 per customer if you wanted to make it to where it breaks even with the depreciation. Now, but going up to $45, it does drop your cost down from I mean, your loss is down from 164 on your regular operating loss without depreciation. So it should about split it in half if you went to 45. My suggestion is to go to 50, to be quite honest with you, to help offset it a little bit more. And hopefully over the years we can make it up.
Mr. Joseph?
Mr. President, can you explain, or someone in your, explain depreciation to, because that price different, you know, I mean, if we actually talking about dollars and just depreciation, you know, what it details, so the public, you know.
Ask Ms. LeBlona to explain that to you because it comes out of her office, but I could, but I might not do as good a job.
Depreciation just means the life of a defined asset divided over those years and how much it would depreciate. So when the life is over and you need to replace it, you would have funds available to do so.
So basically just the insurance, funds set aside just for repairs, updating, what you got.
Right, major repairs and replacement, really.
Okay, because that's the big difference. When you look at it, if you can go up to 45 and just look at strictly dollars wise, you can come close to it. You don't come to the cost of it, 311.
Right.
And 45 will bring us 260. We're still short, but when you add in depreciation, it really jumped.
Right.
So,
And
Okay.
the other side of the coin is if it breaks, you know, or needs to be replaced, you have to have other revenues you have to find to do so. If you don't fund depreciation.
okay. I have one more question, Mr. Bennett.
Go ahead.
The other question is, I look at the insurance costs, and I mean, from 2008 all the way up to 2011, it was pretty much about $6,000 to $8,000. And all of a sudden, it jumped up to $50,000. I mean, insurance went up that much on those systems? Or is this something that we did? I mean,
I'm going to yield to Amanda because she's the one that traced all this.
For our insurance premiums, we actually have a formula that we use based on the amount of the asset. We only do it based on first dollar premium about every 3 years because it's a technical formula. So every 3 years we relook at the formula. So we actually did it in 2012 is when we redid the formula on all our assets. So that's why the price difference went up. When we originally had the formula from 08 to 11, we didn't have all the systems, the values of the systems on the books when we did that first formula.
okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Cluett, I think you were up next.
Yeah, the insurance was one of the things I was going to ask about. But you basically do, on your insurance formula, you use a kill scenario to what, worst case scenario and appraised at current value.
Right.
All right.
And actually, it's, we reduce it by approximately 50% of first dollar premium for it because we partially self-insured. So we do reduce the premium by about 50%.
Yeah. And I just want to, with what Mr. Joseph brought up, is that if you don't put the money back in, you can vary that scenario a little bit if you want. You can relook at it if you have a $100,000 pump that got a 5-year life, then you're going to go 20 grand per year. But if you can take a look at it at 3 years, and you might have done some improvements to extend it out. But that's when you come up with these things. If you don't put that money in, that's when you're going to come back to the council. We come back to the council, we need $1 million for this, we need $1 million for that. And so we got to have that dollar value in there. And real quickly on the monthly costs, is that while we're talking about the, we got the scenario set up 35, 40, 45. As we move forward in the parish wide on the east bank in the sewer, then we've got to look at the scenario of what, is somebody going to be paying a different premium on a plant here versus a plant that's 2 miles down the road, that type of thing. So that's going to come into play. I agree with you, Mr. President, that I don't think $45 is going to balance the checkbook.
Mr. Turner?
As far as the insurance premiums, is that covering any major losses? What exactly is that insurance premiums, or better yet, the insurance covering, as far as the system?
Well, we're partially self-insured, so we have a deductible on, I think of $300,000 per occurrence. But it would cover it if anything happened to it, like lightning. We have had pumps go out from lightning strikes and things like that, so it does cover it. And whenever there's a repair like that, we run it through the insurance fund.
Anything else? Mr. Sadler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I have a question for each of you ladies. Ms. LeBlanc, Gwen, this depreciation that Councilman Joseph was asking about, is that straight line? And if so, what is the time frame? Is it 17 years? What? How exactly? What formula are you using to get those numbers? It's certainly not accelerated cost recovery or anything like that. It's obviously some, because it looks to be a very close number year in, year out.
I'm not sure that's calculated by the auditors at year end. I'm not sure how they calculate it.
So it's a number that Falk and Winkler give you or something?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then my second question, I guess, goes to you as well. Under insurance, so I'm still confused about what Councilman Joseph had to say about the jump from 6,000 to 50. In fact, I asked that last time. And while I have appreciation for the salary reductions that the President has helped you guys make, that we're not looking at not real dollars there, because not all of Mr. Martinez and other people's time is placed on that. And I appreciation also, as Councilman Cluart said, for depreciation, it's real. If you don't put it in there, then problems can happen later. But are those insurance numbers formula numbers, or are they real dollars? In other words, did we spend last year $50,000 in insurance premiums?
It's not. It's a formula. We're partially self-insured. In order to come up with the premiums that's charged to the funds, we take all of the assets of the parish, and we get a total of the asset, and we divide it by...
Okay, I understand. So do you have a number that we actually spent on insurance for these 4 waste treatment plants?
It's not, because our premium is not broken out by just these plants. Our premium is based on all of the assets of the parish.
Are
There's
you
not
willing
a-
to speculate on what a real number might be, though, or? Because we're about to, this is a difficult decision tonight that we all bear. We're about to raise the rates. At least I think that's what's going to happen
I
on
don't have
citizens.
it off the top of my head. I can ask Harry Robert to give us a first dollar premium for it. We don't pay the first dollar premium. We take our premium and subtract about 50% off of it to come up with the premiums we charge each fund.
Wouldn't that same approach, though, would have been used back in 2011, 10, 9, and 8?
It did, but
Before the
back
big
in that
jump
time,
occurred?
we didn't have all of the sewer systems on the books at that time.
I thought there was only one added between, we were told last time, 2008 and 9.
It did, but we didn't redo the formula until 2012.
So,
We don't do
so
the
again,
formula
it's probably a
every
formula
year.
number, or I guess I'm just confused. But thank you.
Also, you said we're partially self-insured, so are we depositing a certain amount of money per month, quarterly or yearly? As far as the self-insured portion of the insurance policy.
We charge the funds and it goes into an insurance fund.
So we're not depositing it directly ourselves into a separate fund?
It
Like I know some entities, they might put aside $10,000 per month, and that goes into their self-insured fund. So is that what we're doing?
Yeah, so
And how much is that number?
in the insurance fund?
Yes. How much are we putting in, we doing it monthly, quarterly, or yearly?
Well, we estimate the premium based on how much each fund is going to transfer, based on the premiums we pay out, along with the claims that we have to pay.
Okay, but do we have a number?
It's probably about $900 and something thousand that we transfer to the insurance fund to cover the premium and the claims
And that's per year?
per year, yes.
How much would be in that fund now?
Fund balance, after we take out what our incurred claims possibly can be for the ones that's outstanding, I think we have about a $3 million balance. But it's based on the actuarial cost. We do an actuary every year.
So to make sure we hopefully can help understand this one part, I guess what we're saying is we didn't necessarily carry insurance on all of the systems we had up until 2012 when we redid the formula. We went and looked and made sure we had all of them on the books, is what we're saying?
Right, in 12, we went back and we took the value of all the assets, any additions, any corrections we had, any, we did work to them, we had to add that amount in, and we updated all the asset dollar amounts, and then we redid the formula.
Okay. Is that better
Not just,
understand?
it's not just sewer.
Right.
It was done on a parish-wide basis on all of our assets.
Right.
As our assets grow, of course, we have to have more and more, we have to cover our liabilities here.
Right.
Just
As
like
your
you
value
would
goes
at
up, you
your
gotta have more money
house.
to
So,
cover it.
and each one of these are, $12,500 a year. I mean, that's not, I mean, if you pay house insurance, you know what you pay. So, I mean, these systems are valued at a lot more than that. And of course, there's a lot more liability there for us. But I
But
hope
it's-
that answers your question, because it's done not on just the sewer system. We don't just look at it one thing in particular. We look at it on a parish-wide basis on all of our assets.
And I guess from a premium or an insurance coverage standpoint of view, what we're covering is the equipment that we own. Pipes in the ground, the treatment system, the pumps, and all those things that are attached to that, correct?
No liability risk.
Yeah,
If you're operating a sewer system, so you have liability risk.
Right, but I mean, as far, right,
Biggest
right,
part of the number, probably.
right. That's what I wanted to make sure that was covered in there as well. Okay. Right. Any other questions? Mr. Joseph?
Mr. President said $50, he put that $50 in there, and I just did the number, so I'm gonna just say, I mean, annually, it would bring in, based on those customers, 289,000, okay? It's still short of 165,000 on it. So, I mean,
With the 45, we're halfway. He just wants to get you a little bit closer than halfway.
And if you take that and you take the 454,000 and you divide it among those 482 customers, the average bill will cost, to bring even, it'll be about $80, $78 a month. Well, I might calculate it
You're doing
wrong.
good.
So, I mean, this is a problem,
Fix it by raising the fees. I wouldn't expect you to go to $120. That's not the way it is. But this is kind of what's happened in the past. We go out and we get grants to do these systems, and they give us $5-6 million to do the sewer system. But yeah, we don't have the operating and maintenance cost. They don't give us that, and they don't guarantee us the amount of customers. So as we move forward with this, I mean, we got to have the customers before we put the pipe in the ground. We can't put the pipe in the ground and not have enough customers to pay for it. So, again, it's a good program. I'm glad that we have these systems in the parish, but it's not a way. You can't break even doing it this way, because you have so many regulations when you get a grant that you have to follow, and things that you have to put into the system that you wouldn't normally have to do. And it makes it so expensive that, like I said, you never have enough customers to. And hopefully in the Dara, Harryville area, if we can expand and go out and pick up some of the customers at Pelican Point, Ascension Trace, and those type things, it can certainly get closer. So, I mean, we can look at this as an investment, hopefully for the future, that, you know, if we get more customers, certainly we can hopefully break even or come close to breaking even.
I mean, it's always about economy of scale with it, right? So, Mr. Cluett?
I guess the parish president covered part of what I was going to say. Don't get totally, discouraged. I mean, we're picking up the pieces of a lot of years, okay, and a lot of low interest loans to go and grant monies to go out and build without any dedicated funds to operate and work. Well, like I said, don't get discouraged. I mean, within that area where these are operating, there's potential for improvements on those facilities to reach out and get some customer base. That the only way to pick the money up is expand the customer base. You can't charge 10 customers $1 million. You got to charge 1 million customers $10.
We can look, we got two prime examples, this, and if you look at ACUD1 is the same situation. They thought they would have 1,100 customers. They ended up with 700 customers, and that's where the shortfall is. So now we have to try to expand the customer base over there also. So, I mean, it's a trap that we keep falling into that we have to avoid in the future and make sure that we have the customers first before we invest the money.
Mr. Shadley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe our chairman's probably fixing to be asking in a moment for a motion, so it's sort of a final question here. I believe this number was given last time, but I think it's probably important to put it back into the record again for the folks that are watching at home. These systems owned by the parish, we're looking at potential increases on the table this afternoon of $35, $40, or $45 per month per customer, respectively. How does that compare with folks who are not on these 4 plants owned by the parish, but are on private utility company systems? What was that number?
I've recently had some conversations with some of the private companies, and I think Ascension Wastewater at about $40 right now, close to that. And then the MODAD people, MODAD custom, they are going to go before the Public Service Commission and ask for $50, from what I understand. So you're kind of right in the middle here as to what's going on. I mean, the costs continually increase, the regulations continually get stronger, and the cost, as I said, to maintain these systems are getting more and more. So, we're going to have to look at this as we move forward in our parish-wide sewer program. So I just threw that out, and I'm kind of, Doc, I kind of see what some of these private operators, I think that Ascension Wastewater at some point is going to probably have to do the same thing, but they have to go before the Public Service Commission to get approval. But as I said, I know that MODAD is currently in the process of asking for a rate increase.
So, Mr. President, the number you just gave at 40, that's an average, let's say, of the 3 or is it 4 utility companies that are out there, Mr. Pertwee, MODAD, Ascension Wastewater, am I leaving out density? That's like an average number?
I would think that right now $40, but as I said, I know that they're going for increases, and I'm sure that
at least one company's
going
for an increase.
Yes, so
Okay.
I don't think it's unrealistic, the 45, if that's what you go with. I think you're kind of in the middle. If you go with the 50, I think you're going to be at the norm in the next year or so.
Michael, you had something?
Yeah, I mean, it might be worth thinking about that Livingston Parish recently just increased their sewage rates to $65 a household. So even at the $50 suggestion by President Martinez, we're still under our neighboring parish as far as a sewer rate. So worth consideration there.
All righty. Mr. Cluett?
Yeah, well, we're talking about rates, and we're talking about the other private entities out there, and public entities, the ones that we have that we're looking at tonight, is that, I mean, let's look at the facts. You just said it. We got one private out there at around 40 or so that's in bankruptcy. We got another private out there between about 45 looking for 50 that's not keeping up, and and got the hammer on them for compliance issues and things like that. And then, you know, we got another private out there that's around between the 40, 45 range that's gonna be going for some more money, even make an attempt to get within compliance. So, I mean, our goal as the public is we've got, you know, we want to deliver a service. We want to get the sewer out the ditches, we want to get it into the river, we want to do some good things, and we want to expand it. But we got to know that it costs us to run this program and to operate it, maintain it, no different than it does a private entity. We don't get a joint of pipe any cheaper than they get. We don't get a valve any cheaper than they get. And you don't get a call out in the middle of the night too much cheaper, okay? So, that's what we plan on doing, and we've got to hit those rates. We've got to find some sustainability in that within the customer base, but work actively to expand the customer base, to take the burden off the small base. That's all I got.
Mr.
Problem
Martinez?
is, we've been told 5 years in a row since I've been back here by the auditors that we need to do this. And I've asked 5 years in a row. And again, I understand. I mean, you're in a position to where you represent constituents in your areas, and those type things are really tough. But if you look at the overall, what we need to do in the parish, you know, we need to be realistic in going forward. And, you know, I just think that whatever you decide here tonight is a step in the right direction as far as whatever the rate. But I think we do need to have a rate increase.
And I just want to finish off with this, is, you know, make no mistake that we're under the same compliance issues as the private guys, okay? We don't have any absolution because we're government. We may have a little bit more leeway to try to work within and work with some of the other governmental agencies that actually regulate, but we're under the same jurisdiction that they're under. Thank you.
2 questions. When was the last rate increase, or have we had one?
I don't think we ever had a rate increase. I think it's been set at $30 since we've been in existence. Gwen, do you? It was not when I was here, so I don't know.
So about
10
10 years
years,
ago, we
10
went
years.
from 25 to 30.
Right.
Okay. And so, I guess, Mr. Parrington, this question would be for you. What is the whatever comes out of this committee goes where? What's the process forward?
Well, the next step will be to go to the ACUD meeting where you'll make a recommendation. ACUD 2 will meet, just like we did with the water. We're going to have a short meeting before the meeting on Monday where ACUD 2 will vote on that. And the next one, we'll have to advertise, so we can't get it to the next meeting. But you'll have to advertise at the public hearing and have a meeting and vote on the increase in rates. Next not this coming council meeting, it'll be the following council meeting. That's when we'll schedule ACUD number 1.
Okay, so if I understand you, basically what's going to happen if whatever we decide, if we
We'll
decide to
make
do
a
some
recommendation to
full council.
ACUD number 2, which is the full council. Y'all,
Okay.
we're going to adjust
Right.
rates based on, by ACUD 2, because that's who runs the utility district.
Right.
now.
Okay. So it would go to the second meeting next month here in Gonzales.
Yes.
Okay.
Just as
Questions
another-
are, I'm
Can I
sorry?
add another matter? I mean, you need to make some movement, not from a legal standpoint, because you can't be donating these services, which is, what you're almost turning into doing that now.
Okay.
Your rates are so
Right.
low that you're crossing the line where you can't make donations to private individuals as a public.
Okay. So if no further questions, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to move the rate to $42.50.
Second.
Got a motion to go to 42.50 and it's by Councilman Turner, a second by Councilman Sadler. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, any opposition? Hearing none, that motion passes. All right. Moving on to item number 9, update on the Hillerville Dyer system. Mr. Dawson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just real quickly, the Hillerville Dyer system is moving into the phase where we are finalizing the actual design. The goal was to have that design completed before December. We expect that to be completed by November. We met with Evans Graves about a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, with Jason Taylor, and that was the goal. I think we should be getting some definite plans and all of that in the next few weeks. We expect to have a meeting with them next week to discuss those particular details. All the cost numbers, the estimated cost numbers will be presented at that time, and at the next utility committee meeting, I should have a full report with those numbers available.
Okay. Any questions? All righty, thank you, Mr. Dawson. Moving on to item number 10.
Motion.
Motion by
Second.
Councilman Kluwat, second by Councilman Sadler to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you, ladies.